Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Now, in the link that's in the description box below, you will see something about Patrick Byrne, who is the CEO of Overstock, and what's going on with him. And if you need a little catch-up, go to that link and see what we've got there first, because then I've asked Thomas to join us and give us the details behind Patrick Byrne's resignation as CEO of Overstock and his allegations of FBI political espionage and why it matters.
Yeah, This is a funny case of the Russian spy, Maria Butina, and the way that she manipulated, this guy who basically was given his first company, let's remember that, and then he was a success with the one that he's in until he started shooting his mouth off and getting himself in some trouble, and we could go into great detail on all of that, but the nice thing is he's got a good heart, okay? He's just a little naive, like so many rich kids, children. I mean, the children of rich people, right? And so Warren Buffett, gave him his first company, and his dad is the head of Geico. And so, you look at the little Geico gecko, well, guess what? He reminds me of Patrick Byrne. Nice, sweet, almost British-like in his very lovely presentation. But the deal is he got himself into a lot of trouble. And now what he's doing is, it's not exactly as it appears. So it's going to take a bit of explanation. Now, a long time ago, the conclave had asked me to please just, really tell people about Maria Butina. And I said, well, the story is not completely written, and I don't really know where I would go with that. But now we do know. And we have it because I'm going to tell you something that I've told you before. And if you do this, I don't want you to do it, okay? But if you go to Wikipedia and you look up Russian interference timeline, you are going to see all of the evidence that didn't come out from Robert Mueller's special counsel report. I already told everyone this. So if you really wanted to know what the hidden evidence that they'd love, that Nadler would love to have, and Elijah Cummings and Pelosi and all of them, they'd love to see this evidence. Well, the evidence is nothing more than news reports. And so if you go to the site, it is the most comprehensive. There may be 10,000 entries on these lines. It's so long they have to break it up into the years. But on there you will see an entire section on Maria Butina. Now, isn't it amazing that Wikipedia knows the stuff that our congresspeople can't get a copy of? And isn't it interesting that the conclusions and that they arrive from spurious newspaper reporting and media reporting, but also all kinds of privileged information. And we have been gathering the same information. We can tell you it's privileged information. So when you want to read about Butina, what you can do there is go to that timeline and you can read what they convicted her for. Okay? A lot of it is partially true, but they don't frame it properly, so therefore it's all wrong. Matter of fact, out of the 10,000 entries, I don't know that there's one entry that I would say was true in terms of the way that it was framed. For instance, Maria Butina, at age 22, became the secretary of one of the most powerful men in Russia, a close personal friend of Putin's. He sits on the Central Committee. He also sits on the Central Bank. And he also, miraculously, in 2011, though he is part of a government, an official part of the government that doesn't allow handguns or weapons, especially any type of assault weapons or weapons you can defend yourself with in Russia, helped found a group called Right to Bear Arms in Russia. Okay, now, that should have stopped everybody dead in their tracks. You did what? Somebody gave you an infinite amount of money to basically one of Putin's best friends. His name is Alexander Nikolaev. And he, of course, is a billionaire oligarch. And he also has a central position and at times has been the chairman of the Russian central bank. You can't get any more powerful than that. But in 2011, miraculously, out of the blue, he got this money and joined with his 22-year-old secretary, who, by the way, she was his secretary. Maria Butina was Alexander's secretary in all three of those different positions. And then when they opened up Right to Bear Arms, she was the head of it. And it basically had infinite money overnight because it was supported by this other Russian oligarch who was the head of the railroads basically throughout all of Russia. And so from the beginning, when they appeared on the scene in Russia, people laughed at her and said, "What are you doing? This is really, no one's ever been successful at any of this, and this doesn't make any sense." Oh, but then Alexander, Nikolaev, and Maria Butina come to America. And because they are for the right to bear arms, they develop an association with the National Rifle Association.
Wait. They came to America. What, did they come on a visa, a visitor's pass? I mean, you don't just come to America, especially if you're Russian agents.
When they first came, they were representing Russia, the Central Committee. When they came the second time, they were representing the Central Bank. At the age of 22, she's some kind of genius, supposedly, who understands all about central banks. So they literally met with people in Obama's staff, literally, the top people. So let's remember, the Russians had the red carpet rolled out to them by Obama and Hillary Clinton. And so all of this was part of their program, except for the fact, think of this, why would they allow somebody coming over to basically be a lobbyist for the National Rifle Association, which is the one thing that the Democrats all hate? Every single demon rat hates the NRA, I believe. There might be one who supports it, but I don't think so. So it was a setup. So Alexander was hobnobbing with everyone. And so he was coming again and again, and so was she. And in the end, she entered the American University there in Washington, D.C. to get a master's degree in international relations, which everybody knows is where the spies come. When you want to send a spy to America, you send him there. I mean, hello, who doesn't know that? But anyway, the point is she was a spy. Well, of course she's a spy. What did they expect her to be? How could they give her a student F1 visa in Washington, D.C. to come to the spy university and not know she was a spy, knowing that she'd already been there many times before with Alexander representing Russia?
Of course they knew she was a spy. That's why they asked her to come over.
And in the end, they arrested her for not filing for FARA, which it means that she didn't file as a foreign agent representing a foreign government. Well, hello, she was a representative of them. They don't have to file. That's stupid. So she got put in jail and put in literally solitary confinement, just like Paul Manafort did, because they said they didn't want her talking to anyone. Well, Robert Mueller ordered that. And yes, but it wasn't Robert Mueller who was in charge of her case. And so she was treated very poorly in this prison. And finally, she was moved down to Florida not long ago, I think in May. And so Patrick Byrne was having an affair with her. Well, she had an affair with Erickson and with J.D., what's his name, Simons, and all these other. She had affairs with all kinds of people. That was her job. She was the honeypot. But her mission, we now know from Patrick Byrne, who comes out, who is the CEO, former CEO of Overstock, which I guess is a very successful company until he opened his mouth on this issue. I guess he went to William Barr and the other person, Durham, who were looking at the corruption of, what was behind the accusations of Russian interference, because he might be afraid, and I believe it's legitimate, that he is somewhat afraid that he was kind of now understands that he was played by a Russian honeypot spy. He was dating her. He thought he was having, a significant relationship with her. At the same time, she was with at least 3 other people I know of, and really, the busiest little Russian spy in America.
Yeah, he says he's there watching his news and he's seeing these names that he recognizes and realizes he was involved in this, and he's like freaking out.
Exactly, and he didn't. fully understand it until all this came out in the news, is the way that he reports this. But it's interesting. First off, we have to have the perspective if you want to see this from the full, big panoramic view. This spy was invited in along with her boss, Putin's dear friend, Alexander Nikolaev. And what were they given? Anything. Red carpet. So why did they let them, if they were Democrats, let these Russians who were their good buddies, remember Hillary and the reset button, remember they built them a uranium enrichment plant, remember everything was done for the Russians, okay? They built them the new tech cities, Skoklovo. Everything was done for the Russians. They were all best buddies. Remember, McCain asked for the Russian, he demanded $1 million 2 different times from the Russians for his presidential campaign. The Russians were our buddies. The communists had infiltrated both the Russians and the Chinese through the Clintons and others. But the point is, this is what the Obamas did. They rolled out the red carpet for them, and they infiltrated the NRA, the National Rifle Association. Okay, stop. Wait. Impossible. That's a setup. The NRA is 100% Republican. They know they're a spy. They know exactly what's going on. So why did they set them up before the next election to make sure they literally had Russian spies practically on their payroll?
Well, because, not every Republican is pro-Trump.
Yes, exactly. And so what happened in the end is when they lost the election, which was a big shock, they said, okay, let's show that the infiltration happened, because we're going to show every time the NRA was associated with the Trump campaign. Hello, the Republicans always associate with them, okay? They go to all their meetings, blah, blah, blah. Now, this Right to Bear Arms, a Russian group, actually invited the heads of the NRA, two of them, to go over to Russia to conferences. And then they invited them back. And so they invented imaginary conferences for a country that doesn't allow firearms for what? This is just a setup. How these people didn't know they were being set up is beyond my imagination.
Let's get to Byrne.
Okay, well, Byrne was supposed to infiltrate her. Well, first off, he says that the FBI came to him, or way up above them, way, way up. And he names Peter Strzok, Andrew McCabe, and James Comey.
And Bill Priestap.
And
that's what I'm like,
and John
whoa,
Carlin.
How come you know this? Because you see what we're seeing here, folks, is a citizen who's getting red-pilled, and we're watching it publicly.
This would have been the people that would have been part of this. Because this was, we set out the 28 treasonous crimes of Comey, which were really the interference in the election. And then after that, there are many more crimes. But this was another one. And this was a crime that was set up ahead of time. And so, did they come to Patrick Byrne? I don't know. The higher-ups, and ask him to do this. Did he previously help them on a murder case? He sounded authentic to me. I don't know. That is a real murder case. That has been checked out. Did he really turn in a whole bunch of people who were part of Wall Street? Yes, he did. That's historic. You can look at hours of tapes of him revealing it. And by the way, we had our experts listen to it, and we've already revealed a lot of those secrets. Well, he revealed those secrets, and they went after his company.
Okay, but who's the we? It was the SEC, right? That's and Melissa Hodgman, who is Peter Strzok's so-called wife,
Yes.
goes after Patrick Byrne's company. See how this little thing is getting tighter and tighter.
As well as the people that he outed went after his company. He called them the Sith Lords of Wall Street.
Peter Strzok's wife, who Peter Strzok is having an affair, so-called, with Lisa Page, is willing to do her husband, Peter Strzok, a favor and put the squeeze on Patrick Byrne. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Now, let's remember. Peter Strzok, Andrew McCabe, William Priestap, Comey, and John Carlin all knew that Maria Butina was more than a Russian spy. She's a Russian agent all the way to the top. How would you expect her to be anything else? That is what she is. That is her job. So they knew that. They knew that they had helped them penetrate the NRA. And they knew that their organization was funded by a corrupt Russian oligarch. started in 2011 and it was fake, and that they were sucking the NRA in so bad that, remember, they had to get rid of the head of the NRA, and there was all the scandal, and then they put Ollie North in charge of it, Oh, don't get me started on that. But anyway, the point is, all the horrible things that happened with the NRA, well, they knew that Trump was going to continue to support them, so they tried to use the NRA to insert Maria Butina into the Trump campaign through Patrick Byrne. Is that possible? Oh, that's more than possible. She was working actively to do so, so why wouldn't she use someone of his influence to try to insert? He was very political. Remember, he ran for the president, and he ran as an independent, of course, as a libertarian. You have to remember, this man is extremely political. He hates Trump and he hates Hillary. He wants Hillary, he said, in jail, and he hates Trump. So this man, when he was asked to basically, under shady circumstances, work with this woman and to insert her into a political campaign, he was really willing to do it into both campaigns. So he tried, but he was ineffective. And she didn't get into the campaigns. And only once was she ever in Trump's presence, and she didn't talk with him. So it was a failed deal, but he was scared to death that the new investigations, John Durham's investigations, are going to take him down. He says, so he came out to admit all of this. Well, we didn't know this, but we did know all the rest. We didn't know he was one of the people that she went after, but we knew all the rest. Now we're going to tell you what he was really doing.
And this week is interesting because we're watching John McAfee, just off the rails about Bitcoin. We're also seeing these fake narratives that are coming out about who the real Satoshi Nakamoto is. And then we did our own research and we track it back to Goldman Sachs and to a guy named Philip Venables. And then here we've learned that this guy was into cryptos.
Patrick Byrne is extremely controversial for many, many reasons, and there's a whole lot of people who hate him who would love to see him go up in fire. And so let me explain a little bit. It's beyond cryptos. This man has a vision, and what is we are seeing, just like Betsy just said, all of the Satoshi Nakamotos are all coming out of the woodwork. Why? Because they're all starting their own Bitcoin. Hello, what is he doing? He's starting 3 different Bitcoins that all belong to him. One to take over the stock market. One to take over our central bank and all central banks in all countries. And one to take over title management for real estate, which is, as he pointed out, the basis of all capital.
Which, if you're a longtime listener of ours, you'll go, wait. You guys talked about that at one time, and we did. It's called MERS. And we told you about how all the mortgages now in your homes have been digitized, so you really don't have a piece of paper that shows that you own it. It's very convoluted. I'll put that link in the description box as well, Thomas. Continue on.
And yet that's the real estate, or as he calls it, capital of America. That's where the money is in the payment of your home and in the asset of the value of your home and the land that it's on, which is, the reason we advocate going back to land banks, taking all titles, registrations, and all bank deeds out of the hands of MERS. Now, MERS is owned by the same company that owns the New York Stock Exchange. So notice that Mr. Patrick Byrne wants to take over what Intercontinental Exchange Incorporated is in charge of, the New York Stock Exchange, MERS, which is now owned by ICE, so the International Continental Exchange is ICE. So when I say ICE, that's what I'm talking about. So ICE owns the New York Stock Exchange, the New York Commodity Exchange. They run the DTCC, which he made reference to many times. And many of the things he's saying about the false IOUs written by, he didn't name it because he's gotten so much trouble, but we've named it, high-frequency traders write IOUs to each other. First off, they have to have a lot of money in the game to do this, but then they write IOUs to each other, which may or may not ever be paid off, and they may make money off of IOUs that are still outstanding. He was pointing this out, a naked short buying, all this stuff. We've pointed these things out. Of course, there's this fantastic corruption on Wall Street. So what did he do? being the son of a filthy rich man, the head of Geico, he said, I am going to be a social warrior. Not only am I going to be a libertarian, but I'm also going to change my company over so that it is a type of IPO that is supposedly supported by the public. And here is where the naivety of the man comes in. He says and tries to explain that it's a type of public IPO written through a Dutch firm. Okay, that's nothing more than another corporation and you're being fooled. And he says it's going to take over in the way that we actually buy and sell stock. It's going to be publicly traded through these new types of public IPOs. Okay, that is an old trick of the Dutch East India Company, which we've already explained. He doesn't seem to know that. He doesn't seem to know that almost every corporation in America owes their allegiance and monthly dues, and all their incorporation documentation is held by one Dutch company. And we've gone in to explain that. He doesn't seem to know that. He thinks he's already created 3 different types of Bitcoin. One to take over all currency in the world, in other words, all central banks. He created a way to get out of the stock market with a corporation, even with his own corporation. So this is no fool. This is a very smart man.
Where is his hubris here?
Yeah, where's his hubris? and then he wants to take over the whole stock market. But remember, we already told you in 2000, ICE had said they're going to sell the New York Stock Exchange, the New York Commodities Exchange, and that included MERS. In 2017, because it wasn't making them enough money. Mm-hmm. Well, he's talking about taking it over because of blockchain. And then he tries to explain blockchain to you, and you might as well have a preschooler explain it. Okay, he's obviously very smart in terms of Wall Street and getting around their craziness because he stood against them for years. And those are the people who did cripple his company. That's not made up. He's not crazy about that. But does he understand Bitcoin? Not in the least, not at all. He is not one of the insider, rogue CIA, Silicon Valley cardboard cutouts. No, he's the son of a rich guy who was then Warren Buffett. Basically, he complains about Trump saying that somebody helped Trump too much. His dad gave him $300 million. Hello, you were given your first company to run by Warren Buffett, Patrick Byrne.
Give Patrick some advice. Tell him what he needs to know so he can leave these troubles behind. Okay,
Patrick, the reason they're coming after you, they don't give a rat's rear what you did with Maria Butina. She has already been put in solitary confinement, and in a few months she'll be deported, and when she gets back to Russia, they will kill her. That's hello? She compromised everything. They don't play around in Russia. You don't play around with Russian oligarchs, okay? You will never hear of Maria Butina again once she returns to Russia and being deported from being a spy, because she also, after pleading not guilty to being a spy, and after pleading not guilty for not filing FARA papers as a foreign agent representing Russia, she then, after she was put in solitary confinement, and look at the pictures of her after that, before and after, not even the same person, just like Paul Manafort. That solitary confinement is where they simply make sure nobody is witnessing what they're doing to you. Anyway, she's coming out of that. She'll go back. No one in America will ever talk to her, and she will be the only person, only Russian, connected to Robert Mueller's fake witch hunt that is Russian, that was indicted. And what was she indicted for? Not filing as a foreign agent when she was already for years working with one of the top representatives from Russia as a Russian representative in a school studying as a student visa. Well, if they thought she was a Russian spy, then they shouldn't have given her the student visa in Washington, D.C. now, should they? They shouldn't have let her in to basically run rampant and have sex with everybody that she could to try to get anywhere near the Trump campaign.
Okay, Patrick is over Marina. Now, what advice do you have for him?
Oh, he needs to realize that the rogue CIA is Bitcoin and that there is no such thing as... But he points out that he would really like a gold-backed Bitcoin or something that backs it. But then he says all these countries are going for it, so he's just going to go for it too. Ha, 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 oh, yay.
Oh, in our report about Bitcoin, can you discuss the discrepancies of when people say it was first used and when the patent was filed?
Well, what you're talking about is Venables.
Yes.
Now, what we revealed was one part of Goldman Sachs.
That's Philip Venables.
That actually pulled down a patent for a type of Bitcoin. At the same time that everyone was saying no bank in America was ever going to do this, blah, 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 blah. The number one people who do all the crooked deals, did all the crooked deals in Russia, both times we collapsed Russia, do all the crooked deals in Ukraine with those oligarchs, all the crooked deals. At least, and I'm very conservative, 75% of them are Goldman Sachs. Why? Because they have the insider trading knowledge of the rogue CIA. That's who they work for. They basically are the rogue CIA. They are corporate intelligence that has gone crazy. So what we pointed out was that they left that big of a trail. And if you want to say rogue CIA, you got to remember it's the bankers and the brokers who work with them. 2,000 companies are basically owned by the gold that the CIA gathered up after World War II, and basically they had to hide it, and they opened up these banks like BCCI. They put their money in HSBC and Deutsche Bank. They put it in the New York bank representing the U.S. Fed. And Goldman Sachs was one of their 5 brokers, of course. And so they were in on every deal. And so when you talk about the collapse of Russia, that was literally a collapse of Russia that Goldman Sachs went in and picked up the pieces from. So what we were showing is those had to do with patents that are part of the same people who did that. But early on, we know, of course, that Bitcoin was founded long before that. But Bitcoin didn't really have hardly any transactions, and they went up and down and up and down, and they had a fictitious founder who supposedly had an unnumbered amount of Bitcoins, which
the important thing is the filing. They had to claim that they are the first of its kind that they know of. So, you have to do an investigation before you put in a patent.
No one will ever be proven to be Satoshi Nakamoto.
No.
Why? Because there is none, and it was a group of people. And it's the same type of people who ran the tech cabal that stole through IBM Eclipse Foundation the technology that was invented by Leader Technologies.
And so to round it up, then, Patrick Byrne probably isn't aware of this. So he will be getting some red pills along the way.
Patrick Byrne's I see as a beautiful violin that doesn't produce good music. Yes, he knows some memory tricks. Why? Because he had time in his hands, because he was, that's what he did. But his position was given to him, okay? He didn't earn it, and he didn't earn what he's done. He's fallen for the Dutch trick of calling stock ownership through corporations through the Dutch registry a type of stock market. It is not. He's fallen for the thought that Bitcoin is going to take over for central banks. Impossible. They don't have the assets to back it up. That's just a junior high student should be able to figure that out. And he's not going to get control of MERS unless he buys the New York Stock Exchange. And they said that, it would be reasonable. They named their amount, and he doesn't have it. And he had to step down as CEO of his company because it dropped, 28% in one day because of this. Because this is the third time he's come out and sounded like a nutcase. And one of the times, yes, he probably was being targeted because he was revealing what we've revealed. And you don't do that if you have all those assets that are vulnerable. So yes, no doubt, that's the reason he had to go and get a different type of arrangement than the New York Stock Exchange. Is he the person to take over for ICE? Oh, no. If you don't know who ICE is, go to our site and plug in ICE, Intercontinental Exchange Incorporated. And you will be shocked at the power and the money that they wield. If I told you, you wouldn't believe it. It's in trillions of dollars in derivatives. And they have more power than anybody can shake a stick at. He made reference to these things and said, blockchain is the answer for that. No, it is not. And I can tell you from what he said, he doesn't know a lick about blockchain. He has fallen for the brainwashing. He is a violin that is either out of tune or improperly made. And he does not know what he's talking about with Bitcoin. He simply took his money from his company, didn't know what to do with it, and did what all these rich people do. They try to buy their own Bitcoin because right now it's all based upon fake trust. As long as you can start it, let it run up, sell it. What's it going to matter that it goes bankrupt? And it will, because there's nothing there.